Hello, everybody. My name is Barry Johnson. Welcome back to Studio Talk. A couple of months ago, I made this particular video right there. And that's where I made a prediction on what Universal Audio was going to do or going to release upcoming here in the first of the year in 2023. The first prediction that I made was they were going to rebrand the Townsend mic to their particular brand and then expand that mic collection into their DSP-based platform. And that's exactly what they did. Now, I didn't have any inside knowledge. I didn't have any of that. But what I started to notice is they were starting to do a lot of sales, almost too good to be true sales, whether they were giving you a free mic with an Apollo series or just really making the incentives for purchasing that mic to really blow out their old stock. I made that prediction, and that's kind of what I based it upon. Plus the typical trajectory, I kind of really knew that's what they do eventually when they bought Townsend mic, which happens to be a very good mic emulation studio mic. It does a very good job. Now, outside of that, the next prediction I made is they were going to come out with a new Apollo this year, and I expect to see that in NAMM of this year. So this one is about that one. So I've already got the first prediction, so I'm batting 1,000% here. Okay, and so on that one, let's wait and see if I've got it right on this next one. I've got a few other thoughts on what I think we're about ready to see because they have also been blowing out all of their Apollo series units, offering tremendous discounts as well as bundled plugins in a way that we've quite not seen that degree of before. Now, typically you would expect to see that happen going into Christmas time towards the end of the year, get some things off the books and ultimately get some sales. But typically when the new year comes around, those things historically have disappeared. And that's not just with Universal Audio, that's with most manufacturers. Well, that's not the case. Today, they're still offering compelling deals on buying one of their existing Apollo interfaces by bundling them with a compelling amount of their DSP-based plugins. They went as far as, if you look at their Ultimate plugin bundle, they reduced that by about 50%. Now, that is highly unusual for that to happen in a retail situation with Universal Audio. It's not uncommon for them to have significant discounts of buying them via their web store. Of course, you already have to own their plugins to do that, but I've never really seen them do that in a retail environment. And so now that we've seen that, so I think that's telling us a couple of different things. One, we're seeing their transition over to Spark, which is their native subscription bundle. Now, you may love or hate subscription bundles, but let's forget about that particular discussion for a second, and let's talk about the fact that their plugins are available natively today, or at least a reasonable amount of them. I think from the last thing I read, they plan to do at least one to two plugins every month and add them to Spark. And historically, since they've introduced Spark, they've been doing that. They've been porting them over kind of one or two at a time and making that more compelling. Now, so you can see the writing on the wall. That clearly tells this guy that they're going to get out of the solely DSP environment completely. And I think that's what we're going to see with the next Apollo. I think what we're going to see is it go into a hybrid type thing. I think eventually over time, you're going to see the fact that they're going to be putting so much more of their emphasis on the native, quasi-native / DSP-based plugins going forward so that you can get the best of both worlds. And what I mean by that, it's kind of a workflow in the way that Avid did the Carbon series, to where you can apply DSP-based plugins while you're tracking or when you need them in critical moments. But then once you finish tracking, you can just switch those back to native. And that's what I think Universal Audio is going to do with the next series of Apollo, of which I expect to see at Winter NAMM. So it's right around the corner. So I'm expecting to see that. And I think what we're going to see there is their Spark-based plugins will also be able to run on new native or new DSP-based technology that can enable you to track with them and then convert them. Because if you think about it today, you can own one of the plugins that's in the Spark program, or plan, I should say. You can own the DSP version, but that does not automatically give you access to the native version. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So you would have to actually have the Spark program as well as that to be able to run one in DSP and one natively. And I think that's just a temporary stopgap that's going to happen until they make this transition. because the reality is computers are getting so much faster. I've been recording natively now for quite a while, and I'm previously over a 20-year veteran of HDX/TDM with Avid and everything, and so where I'd relied solely upon DSP, so latency was just simply never an issue. Well, I've been recording natively for quite a bit now, and I have zero problems with it, especially with the new Apple Silicon-based computers. For me, now I'm a Mac user. Now you can certainly experience that exact same power on the Windows side. I just happen to be a Mac user. So it's not a Mac versus PC thing, so don't get hung up on that either. People tend to. But I think, when you look at the fact that you look at most modern music today, it's heavily influenced by a lot of virtual instruments. And so that is one area where having a quasi-DSP-based solution can be effective, because once you get a lot of tracks going and a lot of virtual instruments tracks going, especially if they're CPU intensive and memory intensive, it's going to be harder for you to drop your buffer down to where you can track and still track through plugins, okay? Whether you're tracking through a reverb, putting a compressor on it, things like that to set the atmosphere for the person listening or monitoring through their headphones while they're singing, it gives you the ability to do that. But so if you can't drop that buffer down, you're going to be stuck either having to freeze all of those virtual instruments if your DAW happens to offer that, and most do today, or you'd have to mix that down to a 2-track, then disable all of those tracks and just play back the 2-track and record the vocal track with that as an example. Well, all these things are time consuming. So if time is money, that's a workflow that you don't want to get into, which is another reason to have DSP. Or ultimately, it can affect your creativity. If you're capturing things and you're in a vibe and you've got things going, when you start to slow down to worry about the technical aspect of it, oftentimes we tend to lose the creative side of it. I know I have in the past. And so by having the ability, AKA the Carbon, by having the ability with Universal Audio to be able to just pop on and convert that native plugin, traditional native plugin, into DSP mode, that will give you the ability to track through it, get that done, and then go back to mixing and just convert that back to the native version of that particular plugin. I think that's what we're going to see. I think it's right around the corner. I think it would be a brilliant move on behalf of Universal Audio, because let's face it, for the last 10 years maybe, they've kind of dominated that home studio market, even into the semi-professional market with their ability. But the bottom line is, if you're tracking a band and you're trying to do that through DSP, you're going to have a hard time. Realistically, you can't track through the most idealistic plugins that you'd want to track through with Universal Audio and have enough DSP power without having to add additional Apollos, additional satellites, and that gets very expensive and starts to pile on. I just think that's an unnecessary thing today. And so where I think some people will, when they make this move, and I'm pretty darn confident they're going to, I'll be very surprised if they don't, but when they make it, you're also going to have some disgruntled people who've been relying on the DSP world, and based upon that architecture, most likely are probably not going to be able to enjoy that back and forth. All I can say to you is, if this happens, and it's still an if this happens, if my prediction is accurate, I think what you're going to, just what I would ask you to understand is, you purchased it based upon it doing that at the moment. It's highly unrealistic to expect any particular manufacturer of any product, quite frankly, to stop developing and evolving their product, and that you can't do that without leaving some people behind. So keep that in mind. So I'm holding my breath, kind of waiting to see what happens. But based upon what I saw with what they did with the Townsend Lab mic and what they've been doing leading up until this point, with all of the discounts going on into the new year, the fact that they've been really making some compelling deals out there, based upon their historical deals and what they did with Ultimate and really slashed that kind of in half, I think all that is leading to where this is going. So if you like the things I talk about on this channel, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button, and that notification bell really helps me grow the channel. But most importantly, if you hit that subscribe button, you really kind of help me out and just takes a second of your time. Work really hard for you, and I'd appreciate your help helping me back. Until next time, I hope you have a great day.